There's a mouse in here. It is really good, but you do have to understand. I think it is a master teacher, but it's in the sense that anything that's an entity and a teacher can be wrong and has to be ran through your own personal analysis. And just because somebody says might be true, that doesn't mean your interpretation of it is true. There's been many times on entities where I get a very vivid message, and it's very difficult for me to honestly interpret what that message really fully means, right? Like it's sort of like it's ambiguous, and it's like in the moment, was he saying it? What were they like? Was it being told to me for me to understand immediately and take it away however I took it, or is it to be further developed? Because there's like something on my bad trip of mushrooms. I had a lot of mushrooms, and it was like I met an entity that said not all at once, and it sort of sounded like he was talking to other beings, like don't talk to this guy right now, like not all at once. But I took that as don't eat all of the mushrooms at once. If you're having a high dose, spread it out. So on breakthrough doses, like it's very, very, very visual. It's incredibly so real. Real is real. Like you're staring at a painting and it's HD and it's higher HD. It's 4D HD. Like I had one trip where I'm staring at the most realist room ever. I'm out of my body, body's forgotten, everything's forgotten. I'm in this room and it's geography stuff like staircases, very upwards, like big boxes, seats, walls, arcing like pathways into other hallways. And I saw it and immediately it looked sort of normal. And then it became a 4D version of itself and grew out of the pre-existing architecture. And from that grew more. And it was very interesting. Yeah. I'm gonna have a bong hit real quick. Just one second. The most visually like what would be the word? Most realistic. The most visually realistic trip I've ever had so far was basically a wall. You could think of it like a bent rectangle, like a bent rectangle of plastic, bent around your head. But it was massive. And there was thousands upon thousands of faces, all similar, all not moving, all very stoically there, like a statue or a totem pole, but very, very highly detailed, like like an entity was there and spent a millennial, spent an eon just carving out all these faces and was like, all right, now it's here, and just walked away. And like, I'm sure it didn't take very much effort to do it for that entity. But I was taken there and shown this and then brought back. And it was intense. I had two very similar trips. One led into the other. It was like I should learn that if I'm gonna have this story, I should learn the name of this painting. But the painting where it's like all those little tiny dots. So if you looked at it very close, it wouldn't even make sense. It'd be all pixelated. But when you look back, it's a giant meadow, and there's people on it with carousels and like umbrellas, and like there's a water and trees. It was sort of like that. I'm at this vantage point and I'm looking down at a meadow and it's full of entities. It's just walking everywhere and happy, and they're all dancing and like sort of things like that, but not really dancing, sort of just but like following. And then I had the next trip after that. I broke through. It was a much bigger dose, I think. Well, not much bigger, but it was a higher dose. And I break through onto this galactic dance floor, this galactic disco. And all these entities are about 15 feet away from my astral body. And they're all dancing and grinding up against each other. And there's lights and trap music. And it's crazy. And like, it's dark. And it's like, they're just dancing on like an asteroid for like ever. Just like, this is where the party is. Like, we've sat here and now we're just going to, enjoy it. The lights and the music seem to keep going. So we're going to dance. And like I popped in there and like everybody, I think they've been dancing for a while, so I don't really feel like they noticed me. But I sort of slipped in and out of the dance floor, and I think on a higher dose, if I somehow had like an E-pen or something and then had to hit that dose at like 60 milligrams, I probably would have been thrown onto the dance floor and surrounded by these things and taken over and tickled and thrown on, and like crowd surfed. I'm sure people have been more intense there than I have, but yeah. Um, Crazy. And it's so fast. And the return is so crazy. You're in such an alien place. Oh, I have to tell the story of my first the time I threw up. That was one of my first successful trips. But it's such an alien place. Like whenever I first after I threw up in the story I'm about to tell, I looked around and it was all alien. These tiny little glyphs and shit everywhere, just buzzing and like little insects. Like it was like, oh yeah, you thought the universe was made of this? It's made of little insects, and they're all dancing, and you just don't see us normally. So I load up a banger. I just took that out of a oil burner, right? But I load up a banger in this bong, right? And I take I think it was 3 or 4 hits, but one of them or two of them weren't successful. And when I'm like, okay, this is good, I turn the torch off. I turn this big fucking I turn this thing off. You don't want to be dealing with something that's bigger than my fucking head whenever you're doing this. That what? No, like fucking the flame on this gets retarded. So anyway, I'm dealing with this thing. I'm dealing with a flame this fucking long, like while I'm tripping. So whatever. Anyway. So basically, then I lay back. I'm finished. I'm like, okay, this is good. I lay back. It's very pleasant. Everything is so fucking calm. And suddenly my stomach's like, you fucked up, kid. And I'm like, uh-oh, did I? And it's like my throat, it's in my throat now, and my throat's like, you fucked up, kid. And I'm like, oh no. And then I close my mouth, and then I fucking throw up in my mouth, and my mouth's like, kid, your past fucked up. And I'm like, damn. So I launch myself across my room. I'm looking for my trash can, and I find it. Throw up in my trash can. Like it was like I shouldn't describe this, but it's funny. It came out like a